personally asking those residents for reviews when you're having conversations with them and when you know it's appropriate. And it feels very weird at first. I remember getting into the industry and having to practice that with people. You're like, oh no, they're going to say no. They're just going to laugh at me for asking them or something like that.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the Multifamily Marketers Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Grillo, co-founder here at Resident 360, and I am joined by my co-host, Caroline Mills. Caroline, how you doing today?
Excited to be back. Doing well. Thank you.
To start today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a hot topic, especially now, which is reputation management and obviously reviews. But before we dive into reputation management, I just want to ask you a question because I know you do a lot of AI stuff
I do.
and you're always doing some unique things every single week using ChatGPT for some really cool stuff. So, what is something maybe you've done in the last week or so that might be different or might be new with ChatGPT that you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, okay. This is actually an interesting one. It relates to our job is I was getting signed up with insurance. And so I wanted to compare all the different options, that I was offered and everything. And so I fed all of the worksheets to chat because you know how it's just so hard to look through those line items. You're looking at like deductibles and your co-pays and like all that kind of stuff. And then, being based in North Carolina, I fed it to chat and then told it all of my primary care doctors that I go to in North Carolina. And then I told it like averagely how many times I go to the doctor, what I do at it, that I wear glasses and prescriptions, like all of that kind of stuff. And told it to explain to me all the different levels and what the best course of action would be based on me and to make sure that my doctors were in network that I was choosing with my plan that I was looking for. And it broke it down so clear and so well for me. I was debating like HSA versus like just a PPO plan. And it helped me understand all of it. It checked with my doctors, like off of their websites and their referrals, if they were in network with me and picked me out all the best plans. It was so much easier than sitting there and trying to come through it myself.
I bet that sounds like that was a massive time saver. So you fed
Right.
it all fed it all your health insurance stuff to trying to figure out what would be the best style plan for you and your lifestyle.
Yes. So much easier, so much less of a headache.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, it's interesting with ChatGPT. I use it for a lot of things, obviously. And one of the unique things I've been using it for lately is analyzing email conversations. So this could work for a lot of people that are listening today. If if you're stuck on a big email chain and there's a lot of different emails going back and forth,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you have to chime in about something. One thing that I found helpful is taking that entire chain, copying it, pasting it right into ChatGPT, and then just giving it a really good prompt like, act like you're the president of Resident 360, analyze this email chain and give me an executive summary and give me 5 recommendations as to what to do based off the emails in this chain. And then what ChatGPT then does is spit out the information. And if it looks good to you, then what I typically do is say, okay, now write this into an email that can be sent out. And then it'll take that information and create it into an email. So that's worked out really, really well. And it gives kind of a different perspective, right? From
Yes. Yeah.
from what you may be thinking, right? So
Yes.
by the way it analyzes it. So I don't know. Something I've been doing lately with ChatGPT, I think it's worked out pretty well. So
That's a pretty good
Mm.
one. I will use it in emails if like you said, like if you're following along on something, sometimes you can get emotional or one-sided to one part of it too. And so I'll put it in there and be like, take out emotion in this, like make sure this is actually addressing, what we're trying to look for. Cause very true.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get started. Today we're talking about online reputation management, or ORM. So, starting with the big picture, Caroline, how would you define online reputation management?
That's a good question. And this ties back well to what we were talking about with digital curb appeal last week. Online reputation management really encompasses everywhere your reviews could possibly be pulling from and how you look for prospects and what they think you look reputation management wise. So this isn't just Google. This isn't just apartments.com. This isn't just Facebook. This is how it pulls all of your reviews across all platforms and how you appear to your prospects. And being able to not only have reviews in those places, but the goal would be to have good reviews in those places and be replying to reviews in all of those platforms.
So why would you say it's more important now than it was a few years ago? I mean, I know the whole landscape has completely changed, but why now?
Absolutely.
Why is it so critical now?
Yes, nearly all of our renters start their journey online on a digital platform in some way. I think, we're all familiar with just more people are moving now more than ever, just around the country, not necessarily even just locally anymore. We all have, known people that work remotely. And so everyone is using those digital platforms to first look for their jobs and at least vet through what they're kind of looking for and narrow down their search. People obviously still go to in-person tours, they schedule things online and they look at those websites, but everyone's going to start their search online somewhere. And so you just want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and presenting everywhere super well reputation wise. You don't want one platform where that person starts their search to be, 1.5 when you're really proud of your Google 4.5, but maybe that's not where they found you. They found you on apartments.com. And so it's just really about having that all-encompassing online reputation everywhere you list and where your property is at.
You mentioned, Google, and then you mentioned apartments.com.
Mhm.
Is Should there be a focus for when it comes to reviews on one versus the other? What is your thoughts then on all the different platforms out there where you can give reviews? I mean, should you
Right.
focus on all of them? Should you really just focus specifically on Google? Like, what's kind of the thought there?
That's a good question. And it's something we would look at a lot with our properties. So I would say first, gather all your data of what are your star ratings on all your different platforms. Look at your apartments.com, look at your Facebook, look at, if you've got any kind of review platform that's collecting for you automatically, look at Google and find which one is your outlier. So if across all of your platforms, you're normally hitting a 4, but on apartments.com, you're hitting a 2.5. At that point, apartments.com would be your outlier. So then you would want to focus your efforts on apartments.com. If you're hitting pretty consistently everywhere, say, okay, well, I've looked up all my platforms and I'm a 4.2 across everything. Which one should I go for first then? Then I would say Google would be your best one to go for if you don't have an outlier that you should be targeting first.
Okay. So the phrase perception is reality comes up often in multifamily.
Mhm.
How do you really see that play out when it comes to reviews?
I think it's very easy for people to not intentionally, but get a bias from your reviews. If they go and look at your most recent 10 Google reviews and two of them say that there are, bug problems on your property, but the other 8 reviews said glowing, fantastic things. Well, that person shows up for a tour on the property. They're naturally going to be looking around more for bugs, or maybe they get into that vacant unit that they're seeing and they say, so, do you have a pest problem here? Do you have and they're just going to have that bias and that perception. And, not everyone has a great experience with everything at every place they live. But putting those things online and either not addressing them or not knowing as a team how to address those things when they come in can definitely alter your prospect's perception and then how they're going to treat you when they walk through their door.
And how would you say the property's reputation directly impact the lease up speed, the lease up of that property in today's market?
Yes, absolutely. No, 100% does. There are studies out there that have shown us that the higher review ratings you have, the more likely you are to be able to lease up your community faster. And don't focus only on lease ups. It's not just for how fast you can lease up or how fast you can turn over vacant units, but how well you can retain residents as well. So when these prospects are starting their journey online and you're looking at a town where you've got 5 lease ups all within 3 miles of each other, and one of those lease ups has a perfect 5.0 rating and the other 4 lease ups are below a 3, that prospect is gradually going to go for those ones that have a 5.0 versus those 3.0 ones. And that's just where they're going to start their journey. They may come into that very first property and then go ahead and sign that day. So having a good online reputation definitely helps you move units faster. and just gives people less things to look into. Like if they're going and clicking all those Google reviews and they're all positive and they all look great, they're going to think, wow, this must be really awesome living here, versus conflicting reviews and negative reviews where they think, do I want to have to deal with that kind of issue? Do I want to face that same thing? So it just really helps that it helps you kind of, filter through people who are going to look at you first.
So that kind of brings me to the next question. So have you seen examples where a strong reputation has won a lease over, say, a competing property that has better pricing and a lot better amenities?
Yes, actually, when I was on site, I specifically remember it was in Wilmington at the time, and I was a leasing consultant. And I remember someone coming in and saying, we read your reviews and we heard all of the great things about all these resident events you have. And they were like, are those free? Like everyone seems to really love those. And we were like, yes, those are all free. And we told them about all these great resident events we had done recently. And we were in heavy competition. I mean, we had so many properties. We weren't far from the beach. We had a lot of communities around us that we were competing with. And it was just really nice because that was something we were always pushing for. And it was just really nice to hear that from a prospect that they are looking at those things and it did make a difference. And they did end up leasing with us.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, Now, when it comes to review platforms, I want to go back to this for a second. Obviously, Google is the first place probably everybody looks.
Right.
Everybody's starting from a Google search. So even if they're Googling a property name, the Google business listing pulls up, you're going to have the reviews right there. So it's really front and center. It's
Yeah.
easy to see, it's easy to dig into. And that's going to form probably the very first perception that person has
Mm-hmm.
for a particular property. But when it comes to maintaining presence on other platforms,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say Yelp, right? That's something we haven't talked about yet, but
Mm-hmm.
Yelp used to be massive, right? So
Yeah.
Yelp, you've already mentioned apartments.com, even some of the social stuff like Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how important is it really to maintain a presence on these other platforms? I know you mentioned it, meaning like kind of like evening out the reviews. If you find a
Yeah.
platform
Yeah.
that you're at a 2.5 and you Google's a 4, well, you need to focus on getting that 2.5 on the other platform up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really um, is that the case? I mean, really, are we trying to maintain a strong presence on all these different platforms? Starting with, would Yelp be considered the number two, or would it be like an apartments.com?
That's an interesting one, and there's a different depends on what you're looking for. So NMHC and Jay Turner pair up each year, and they release the top 50 multifamily managers in the business, and then you get a score out of 100. And each property gets a score out of 100, and then for each multifamily managing group it averages all those properties together, and it does track your reviews across all of your different platforms. There are different weights for recency, for relevancy, for what they're mentioning, for how often these things are happening and being quoted on. And then it does look across all platforms though. It is interesting, you do have to be careful across different platforms. Like for example, Yelp, you can't target Yelp. So you can't target Yelp reviews for your residents. That is like a big no-no for them. Whereas you can, create QR codes for apartments.com and Google. I would say definitely put your priority of where your listings are. If you're not listed on apartments.com and there's no, score that comes up for you, or maybe it's very dated and you haven't been on apartments.com in 5 years, then maybe that's not the source that you would need to focus on first. But I would say, they hold a lot of weight there when you are Googling properties that'll come up anyways in your search results. Make it easy when that prospect Googles you or Googles something around you and all those search results. Now your Google business profile will actually list what your review is on other places for your prospects. So if they scroll down on that Google business profile listing, it will tell them what you're rating on maybe rentcafe.com, on apartments.com, and then obviously as your Google score. And so they do make it really easy for people to see those things. So if you're not on the listing, I would say it's not your top priority. If you're needing to put fires out and you're at a 3.2 on Google, definitely put your priority there. But if you want to have the best chance you can and being well-rounded, definitely focus on your apartments.com and maybe any other listing you have that you're active on that's appearing in those top results.
Caroline, you mentioned Jay Turner's Aura
Mm-hmm.
score. I'm just curious, what does Aura even stand for? The ORA. What does that stand for?
Yes. Aura or ORA with Jay Turner stands for Online Reputation Assessment. So they're actually giving you a score, a grade of 1 to 100, and they are grading you and assessing you across all of your different platforms and putting together how those different scores give you a numerical score based on 1 to 100.
And they released a report, and I know companies like Hawthorne, Bozzuto, Camden consistently are at the top of the ratings.
Yes.
Like, what are these companies doing differently from the rest of the industry?
Yes, they are asking for reviews. And I know that sounds so simple and so easy, but it's very easy in the day to day of property management. We have so much going on and there's so much happening that we're dealing with day to day of not thinking of always asking for those reviews and not just asking by sending out an email blast to your residents and asking for it, but actually personally asking those residents for reviews when you're having conversations with them and when you know it's appropriate. And it feels very weird at first. I remember getting into the industry and having to practice that with people. You're like, "Oh no, they're going to say no. They're just going to laugh at me for asking them or something like that." But it truly is just getting used to asking, and really most of the time they say that 90% of prospects would leave a review, prospects and residents would leave a review if they were asked. So it really is just asking.
So just asking. Now, let's talk about that for a second. Do you have some best practices for encouraging the residents to leave a review that doesn't feel forced? Because I think the big thing is it can feel forced a lot of times, right?
Yes.
Like, gotta get reviews, gotta get reviews, gotta get reviews. So it just has a very forced feeling to it. Is there any insight you got there? Any best practices? I know the thing is to keep
Yeah.
asking and asking and asking and getting comfortable with it, but
Mhm.
anything?
Yes. I would say, and especially when you can be under a lot of pressure from maybe your ownership group or your management group on needing to ask for reviews, but let them occur naturally in what you're doing as well. Just have it in your mind, on the corner of your mind of asking those kind of things. But when you practice more, it makes sense. You know, you have that resident that comes in for coffee every single morning and tells you good morning as they walk by. And then they stop by on their way out and they say, you know what? I really love these new, hydrangeas you guys put in the front. They look really nice. That's your cue. That's your moment. So it's like being on the lookout for those cues of when those things happening and be like, wow, thank you so much. Would you mind leaving us a Google review and letting us know how that was and, what you love about us? And 9 times out of 10, they're not going to laugh at you. They're not going to be like, oh my gosh, that's the most insane thing you could possibly ever ask me and storm out of your office. They're going to say, yeah, you know what? I will. And so being on cue for those kind of natural things that come up, your people who you see all the time, those we call them quote unquote sunshine residents. So those sunshine residents are the ones who, usually you're in a good mood. It's not that people can't have bad days, but you always see them out walking their dog and they tell you hello. They come in for their rent check every month and, always ask how you're doing. And they show up at every resident event you have and always have a great time. Those are your people that you want to target first. And that makes it easier for you to get out of the way because usually you have a pretty good rapport or relationship with them. And then my second one would be resident events. Most of these times at resident events, you don't want to make it like, oh, well, I'm giving you this, so you give me that. That feels very transactional to them. But then using that time, when they're having a great time, they're having some drinks with their friends and they're like, this is so great. I love that you guys do this. That's your cue again. So then that cue triggers and you say, that's so great. I'm so glad you love this. Would you be open to leaving us a Google review? And you can really connect with people. And most often they are going to leave it. And then I would say our third one is your secret weapon is your maintenance team. So a lot of the time people think, oh, well, maintenance is just busy. They're going in and out of units. Residents may not even be home when this is happening. But a lot of the times your maintenance team is the people inside those units. They get to know those residents while they're in there and fixing issues for them. So most often in the time that resident is most happy when their toilet is now unclogged or now their water is hot when they take a shower and they're very grateful for those things and they get to talk to those maintenance supervisors and technicians while they're in their apartment and use that time to have your maintenance technicians either, leave QR codes or talk to the resident when they're in there and they have the best success rate of asking for reviews and being able to get them from people.
How do you stay on top of people to make sure they actually leave the review? So you've got
Yes.
your sunshine residents, right? So
Yep.
I can, and again, I think a lot of this comes down to training on site, the
It
on-site
does.
team being fully trained to listen for the cues, almost even having maybe there's a checklist they have that are potential cues that where you do ask
Yes.
for
Yes.
a review. But the big question I have is, you have a good rapport with somebody and you ask them for a review and it's very natural and
Yeah.
the resident's like, absolutely, sure, I would have no problem giving you a review. But then they go on in their daily day, they
Yes.
go on with their day and everything that comes from that. How do you make sure they actually give you the review? Do you send a follow-up email? Do you stop by their knock on their door? Like, what, or do you just not? You just take it for what
Yeah.
it is and hope that they cross your fingers and hope they leave the review.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's very normal too. I think we've all been in those scenarios where we're like, "Wow, this is great. I'm going to go on and leave a review." And like you said, you go on with your day or something distracts you and you totally forget. So definitely make it as easy as you can for them. Like I said, if you're at an event and you have QR codes, let them tap it right then so it's already up on their screen. So they don't even have to go and search for you. One of our other techniques we would use is, like you said, having emails or text messages were both really important, and having links again to those Google reviews. So don't just ask them. If you text them and say, "Hey, remember you were going to leave us a Google review?" and that's all you say, that doesn't help them anymore. Now they're like, "Oh, yeah," and then still have to go open it up or find the right thing. Make clickable hyperlinks on your words or just include URLs for them so that it makes it really easy when they're on their, most people are going to be looking at these things on their phone. So then when they're on their phone, it takes them immediately to your Google page. It makes it really easy for them to leave a review.
So the key here is ask, ask, ask some more, ask
Yes,
in scenarios and that where it's very natural, resident events, arm your maintenance team with
absolutely.
QR codes, maybe serve little, after work order
Yes.
surveys.
Yep.
And maybe what about like QR code business cards with QR codes on them that can be easily be scanned, or having large QR codes at events or
Yes.
stuff like that. Is that the idea here?
Yeah, absolutely. We've used QR codes and tap tags. If you're familiar with tap tags, I mean, you can tap to pay now, so most people are getting pretty familiar with it. But we had tap tags. Either it could be around our maintenance technician's neck on their badge. Tap tags could be, like you said, almost on a business card type thing, or on somewhere on your desk. And so all somebody had to do was tap their phone to it, and it would immediately pull up that Google listing for them. So carry those things around and have them handy at events. Just have your tap tag. So then the person doesn't have to keep up with another piece of paper they have. We all also get home and throw our piece of paper onto the table, and then it gets rummaged with homework and other business things you may have. So be able to have it easy and then have those things on you often. If you can't have a tap tag, that it totally understand. Have those QR codes handy, like you said. Maybe put it on a business card. Maybe have, if you're giving out goodie bags, hole punch them, tie them to the goodie bag so that it always carries with the item the resident is taking home with them, and make it really easy for it. Put it in their move-in folder, things like that that they're always going to have on them.
How often should teams monitor reviews and who should own that responsibility?
Oh, good question. I would love for it to be every day, but I know that's a big ask, and we always have a lot going on in multifamily. I would say the general range of what you would like to accomplish each month is 5 to 7 reviews if you're trying to maintain consistency. Now, that's at if you're at a 4.2 to 4.5 and you're trying to just maintain that positive, healthy growth. If you are at the range of being a 3.0 and you want to get up to a 4.5, I would say you want to go for as many reviews as you can in the next few months until you get to that maintaining level. Once you reach that maintaining level, then go back to that 5 to 7 a month. And as far as responsibility, this is a full team responsibility. Now, you as a community manager or a regional manager may be the person who actually has the login or the credentials to go and reply to those Google reviews. And so that is definitely something that should be checked as often as you can. I would again like to say daily, but at least every few days as often as you can. But it comes down to the full team, bounce off each other. We would do something with me and my leasing consultant in the office, and, they come in and they'd say, "Gia, that was such a great tour. We're so excited to move in. We can't wait for this to happen." And then she would be like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." And I would be like, "You know what? You should leave Gia a review. I've been trying to help her, boost her online reputation and help her review, like her name get mentioned in reviews. Would you guys mind helping that?" So bounce off each other with those kind of things, just like you do in closing sales techniques in the office too. So definitely a full team effort.
Is it ever okay not to respond to a review?
Oh,
Like, what's the
no,
strategy? Like, what's
never.
the strategy for dealing with the negative ones?
And I know that's so hard to do too, and so easy to get defensive. Like maybe it is just a problem prospect, a problem resident. Maybe it's someone you know doesn't even live at the property and has gotten their friends to go and leave reviews on your Google listing or things like that. It's very easy to get defensive. Have scripts is what we would tell our teams. Have a few options to choose from, whether it's a negative review, a neutral review, or a positive review, so that you, again, aren't getting emotional or defensive in your responses. Respond to everything as quickly as you can. It does make a difference as far as your Google crawling and the health of your Google business profile listing. And so respond as often as you can. Always respond to reviews. Now, this brings up a good point that we've talked about before with taking over properties. Say you take over a property, you're a new management company coming in, and you're brought on because maybe they just weren't having a great time and they did have bad reviews and everything like that. Our general rule of reference was don't go back longer than 6 months on reviews that you're responding to. You don't want to hash up anything old, that already happened that you don't want to re-bring up with a resident. But get in there, tell them that you're the new management company, you'd love to help them, or that you're thankful for the review, and get back in there and respond to them. But it's so much easier to just keep up with them as they come in versus, bulk doing it at the end of every month.
So, is there a way to coach teams to kind of respond authentically versus sounding like a template? Because yeah, I see it
You
all
know,
day long when I look at reviews for properties. I mean, a lot of it is very template based
yeah,
responses. Oh, sorry you had this type of experience. Call the office so we can talk with you about it. Type.
yeah.
Is there a way, or is there a coaching or some type of strategy for responding authentically to a
There
review?
can be. Yes, yes. As far as not, one, teaching them, don't get too defensive in the review, even if you know, or in the review reply, even if you know you did everything you possibly could and you know how it's been going with that resident or that prospect and you know what's going on. One, use their name, when it's available in Google reviews. Usually it's people's names. I know some people make Google accounts under, different things, but use people's names when you can, when you're responding to them. Make it personal for them. And, taking it one step further as far as good customer service, if there's anything you can do for that resident when they've left a negative review, try and talk to them first. I actually personally have seen it happen where it's a negative review and that person just felt like they weren't being listened to. They had a time when maybe the team was changing, when there wasn't full staff, there was all these different things happening on property, and their problem, they felt like they just weren't being listened to. So they left a 2-star review rating saying, well, I love the amenities, I love the location, but this, and this has happened. We were able to talk to that resident and solve the issue. After the issue was solved, then we reached out to them to say, hey, if you're having a better experience, would you mind updating your Google review? And we have seen people go in and update Google reviews and make them positive. So use that time to really connect and solve the issue with that resident when you can. If it has to be a negative review, it happens. We can't help that all the time. Yes, use their name, make it personable. Try, if they've reached out to you, then saying, necessarily, oh, well, call our office today. They're going to be like, well, yeah, I've been doing that for a week and nobody answered. Try it and say something you can to, help people looking at that review feel better about it. I think definitely own up to any mistakes that could be made and just recognizing that they had a negative experience and validating it.
That's a really good tip, using the name. So even if you are using a template-based response, putting something as simple as "Hi, Josh" to start the review
Yes,
to start the response to the review can at least give it a little bit of personalization. So I think
100%.
that's important tip because I don't think you see that a lot in
Yes.
review responses. Okay, moving on. What role does on-site service and communication play in shaping your online reputation?
Everything. I would say people are more likely to immediately go online and leave a negative review when they have a negative experience out of their own, desire to do so than they do when it's positive. They could be having a great time and have a positive experience the whole time, but unless they're asked, they may not leave a review. You never have to ask your angry residents to leave reviews. They're going to go and do it automatically. And so communication is 100% the most important thing as far as shaping both positive and negative reviews. And when the J Turner reports are pulled on NMHC, you can actually see each top multifamily company. I think it's maybe the top 10 in each category. They break it down, and there's like work orders, there's cleanliness, there's like security, and there is communication. And so they will actually go and filter all these thousands and thousands of reviews that they've pulled in for the past year and rank these multifamily companies on communication. And so they are mentioned in reviews so often.
So how can multifamily companies use reviews as really a feedback loop for operational improvements?
Yes, and we would do that at the corporate level. If we could narrow down how we were pulling in our reviews, and it is helpful if you have some sort of database you're using that helps you collect these things. But if you have a partner like J Turner or Reputation.com, they can help do this for you too, and pull in those common keywords that are coming up. And then you can narrow it down not only by, if you're a management company that ranges across a lot of different states, that can also help. And so you can narrow it down by maybe regional manager. You can narrow it down by state, by city. Is there a common issue that in Florida, in the Tampa and St. Petersburg area, you're getting constant comments on how pest control is bad and they're not getting pest control? Well, now you've narrowed down where this issue is coming from, and you can target that kind of thing to just stop these negative reviews from coming in as best as you can and make those changes. If there is maybe a certain region where you're constantly getting communication issues, well, maybe now we can target that certain region with some training and teach them better communication styles. And so it does help you identify where training opportunities can come up, where changes can be made, and you can help your on-site teams, because the on-site teams are going through a lot and they're asking for those reviews, but you as an owner or management group can do these things to help them.
Great advice there. Now, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Just two last questions
Mhm.
for you that I think would be beneficial for the audience. Now, if a property has a weak reputation today, what's the first step you'd recommend they take to turn it around?
First step, start asking for those sunshine reviews as quickly as possible and as many as you can get. Work together and just start asking, and take them where you can get them. If you have to target one, target Google. But just asking people for reviews, and again, make it easy.
And last question, what's one thing listeners can do this week to improve their community's online reputation?
Ooh, very first thing, audit yourself. Just like we talked about in digital curb appeal, go online and audit and first find out. Are your reviews great? Are they 6 months old? Are they yesterday and nobody's responded? So kind of find that area where you need to look. You may be listening and thinking, oh, well, I'm fine. I've got a 4.2 on Google, a 4.5 on apartments.com, and a 4 on Yelp. Those are great, but maybe your last review was a year ago. So now when prospects are looking online, there's nothing recent to tell them why they should move in this year with you. So quick audit of yourself.
Perfect piggyback from last week. Do your digital audit for your curb appeal, and obviously reviews, reputation management needs to be a part of that.
Yes.
So wrapping up this episode of the Multifamily Marketers Podcast, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. Next week, we'll have a different topic, and please subscribe and leave us a review, help us grow this podcast. And we thank you guys for joining us today. Caroline, thank you for being on the podcast once again.
Thank
and
you.
Wish everybody a fantastic day, and see you next week.